Good afternoon. It is Friday, and I know that if you're in real estate, that means about nothing to you because we have the opportunity to work all the time. I wanted to just touch base with you briefly here by video because that's the best way I have to reach people, as you know. I wanted to discuss a matter of great importance and concern to me, and I believe it is to many of you as well. I want to walk you through what I had mentioned in my live video on August 1st. So pause here if you did not watch my video from August 1st. That will tell you why I'm coming to you today about the recent process that unfolded regarding my candidacy for the position of first vice president within our organization, the National Association of Realtors, a process that I believe was flawed and arbitrary. On July 6th, okay, so actually back this up, I filed my full application on March 1st. So everything was submitted on March 1st. On July 6th, I was given notice and guidance about a meeting with the CCRC subcommittee. And that notice came at supper time. I was sitting with my family and checked my messages, which I know is bad form, but I did anyway. And I was asked to respond very quickly to have this meeting, which has questioned some of my social media engagements. Again, the notice that I got, there were 5 posts. There are many rumors out there saying that it was dozens and dozens, and that's not accurate, and it just is what it is. In just a few minutes, when I met with this group by Zoom, I addressed their concerns. I explained the action I'd taken to rectify their concerns, which was deleting those posts because I didn't realize they were causing all this consternation. So I took them down. And I emphasize that I, as a human, am always on a continuous effort to improve myself, whether it's on social media or in real life, and grow as a leader and a human. Now, the members of that subcommittee were tasked with asking me questions, and they asked there were 2 questions asked. Most of the microphones stayed on mute, and so I didn't really know what to expect from that process. I told them what I thought and answered their questions, and it was over very quickly. And that afternoon, they had deemed me ineligible for the process of being a candidate. So within our policy, there is an appeals where I can appeal to the full committee, and that's what I did. So on July 20th, I appeared before the full committee where I explained, my growth, where I've learned, and apologized if I had offended somebody, if they got hurt by reading something that I had liked. And I asked to be judged on my record of service and on my actions and on what the experience is being around me as a human and as a leader. Now, that meeting was in person because in the policy, it does not provide for an online appeal. It's just not in there. So we met in person, and we had been told prior to this meeting, my team and I, that there had to be a quorum present in person for the appeal process. Well, they did obtain a quorum. And at this meeting, I had a chance to present my comments, as did my state CEO, Andrea Bushnell, and my committee chair, Mike Ford. And they used their time wisely. I used my time wisely. We laid everything out there transparently and truthfully. And we left the room, and the committee deliberation took a few hours, which we do know included a 45-minute break where there was a debate on whether Zoom votes would be allowed. Now, the policy does not provide for Zoom attendance or voting. There is, of course, an assumption now in today's world that with the COVID era, Zoom is a part of every meeting, but there was no provision for Zoom voting. And so an outside parliamentarian was brought in to resolve the voting questions. In my mind, this demonstrates how unclear it was to the committee itself if anyone from Zoom could vote that day. And why would anybody have to be there in person if you could vote by Zoom? So again, the people aren't the problem. It's just a very unclear and capricious process. Eventually, the parliamentarian deemed that the Zoom votes were legal. And with that being included, I fell short of the 2/3 majority needed. So by 1 vote, I was deemed ineligible. And again, I'm not questioning the thresholds that are established by the committee and verified by the board. I'm just letting you know that, in my opinion, when the information is unclear to the volunteer members and is unclear to a candidate to the point where a parliamentarian has to be called in to referee, at that point, I should have been brought back in to let me know what the parliamentarian had decided, but I was not aware of that change in the process. That being said, The appeal process was conducted pretty much on the fly because it was moving very quickly to stay within our deadlines. And obviously, the voting procedure was unclear to many who were involved. It's the lack of clarity that is fundamentally unfair. And I think that hindered my opportunity to be evaluated fairly. And I believe it affected how the committee felt about the meeting when some had flown and some were on Zoom. And again, I wasn't inside all their heads and hearts. I don't know that. I'm telling you what my perception is as the candidate. I'd also say that there's an arbitrary nature to the social media audit of the process, because I'd like to know who determines what social media activity is okay and what's not okay. What in the world are the filters for that search? Who sets them? And is it published somewhere? I'm not aware of those filters, but I do know that the 5 posts that were deemed to be a question mark were all conservative viewpoints. Nothing had ever been a complaint, and there was nothing in there that would have violated our code of ethics. And so the question becomes, who sets the parameters? I believe it's an arbitrary and capricious process when you consider that nobody knows the filters or the guidelines or, frankly, who's on first, except we're told we just have to trust the process and trust legal counsel. Well, I trust legal counsel myself and my business all the time, but I also know that if I call multiple legal folks, they're probably going to have multiple legal opinions, and that's why you want to have more than one person look at a process, and including outside people. Now, what I thought was kind of curious was that I was encouraged by the committee to run again next year or in the future. And I don't understand why I would wait a year to be eligible if I'm eligible now, except for some social posts. And because I had removed them, I didn't understand what the problem was. I was told, well, they might have been screenshot. Well, if they were screenshot, they're not going to be deleted between now and next year, which is almost a weird little pretzel to tie. But it just seems odd if I'm almost eligible this year and might be eligible next year. I don't know what's going to change in a process that's already arbitrary and capricious. It just seems odd to me. And I'm sharing that with you as a human and as a volunteer who is still a very active and paid member of this organization and who values the work this organization has done over decades for entrepreneurship and home ownership. I mean, y'all, all along, all I asked for was a fair chance to campaign to the full board of directors. Unfortunately, that opportunity has been denied to the board due to this flawed and arbitrary, and I'll say it again, this capricious process. I might have lost in front of the board. I'd be okay with that. What I'm not okay with is that the directors don't get to be the ones that pick. And I know that's how the guidelines are set up. CCRC's decision is final. I can read what that says. I can also see the muddy waters around how that process is determined. So regardless of what happens with me, I do believe that those policies should be reopened and visited, because all of our processes should be just like our code of ethics, which is a fluid document that is constantly looked at and improved over time to serve the public better and serve our profession better. At the heart of it, this isn't about my social media post. It's about the integrity of our organization. And when you look at policies and procedures that do need improvement, that means our decision-making process needs to be improved, because you want to ensure fair opportunities for leaders. You want to ensure fair opportunity for every paid member. You want to ensure opportunities for people we've never met before who might bring something really interesting and engaging to the organization, because we're in a time of flux in this profession. So what better time to have fresh voices at the table that may bring a different perspective? Because frankly, that ideological diversity is so good for our organization. And it's why my circle of friends and supporters and colleagues is wildly different than I am, because I love listening and I love growing and I love hearing different perspectives. Our organization's going to have that. And to have that, we have to have a dignity and an integrity in the process. I would also say this: a leader who was supported by the association, to my surprise, when I ran for Congress, I did not know that the National Association was going to support me in 2019. One of the biggest surprises of my life was when the local radio station called me and asked me about an ad buy. And I said, what? And they said the realtors were making an ad buy for my campaign. I said, are you sure? Because I had no clue that was coming. But they decided on their own to support me as a candidate because of what I have brought to the table as a leader. I was asked to lead advocacy in the organization, and I believe I did that very well and very thoroughly, as I had 61 pages of activities performed in that year with joy and with delight, because I love what we do, and I love the actions our members take, and I love supporting our members in their work. And I'd never previously had my social media conduct called into question, so it's just odd. Just going to point that out. I think our members deserve to know these details. That's why I'm bringing it to you. I think the directors should have a voice in the process and should be willing to stand at a microphone and ask if they have questions, and not be in a setup where we have certain bodies making decisions that can't ever be questioned. We should all, every one of us, be willing to ask and receive questions, because that's where we grow and that's where we learn, and that's where other people get to have input into the process. All of that is a part of holding ourselves accountable. I think this organization will be its very best version of itself when it lives up to the highest standards of transparency, fairness, and of course, ethical conduct. And we all can do better when it comes to those items. So anyway, thank you for listening. I just wanted to drop this out there. If you know somebody who's on the directors for the National Association of Realtors, feel free to tag them or share this with them so they have a chance to hear my voice and not just whispers in the background. I would just remind all of you that the code of ethics we love and that we hold dear should be active in our lives. And Article 15 says that we won't say false or misleading statements. And so if you hear statements that you question, maybe ask me directly, because I will tell you absolutely everything that I know and I am, because I remain committed to the work that this organization does. I remain committed to the organization and its amazing members who are all over the place. And frankly, most of them have no idea any of this is going on. But for those of y'all that have reached out for whatever side of the situation or the aisle you're on, just to give me a high five, your support means the world to me, because that's the support that means everything to our membership and to the communities that we serve. We have so much work to do. The last thing we should be worried about is trying to restrict our candidacies. What if we just let people run and then go do the great work that we've been called to do through real estate while we serve our communities and our property owners, our future property owners, entrepreneurship, and get back to doing the hard work on regulation and policy that's got to get done so that we can make sure the American dream stays alive for everyone. So anyway, let me see if there are any comments. I had my glasses off, by the way, because I forgot on the last video, and the glare was apparently entertaining. So let's see. All right. I don't see any big questions over here. And this is obviously not the same day of the week as Tuesday, but thank you for dialing in. Feel free to share this with anybody that has questions. Call me, text me, email me. And for those of you that are serving this organization, thank you. It's an unpaid, unthanked job quite often. And so the work that you're doing to protect the American dream might go unnoticed by others. It does not go unnoticed by this girl.